In case you guys haven't heard, the Tesla Cybertruck went viral last week. Now, there are things that I really love about it, and there are things that I really hate about it. So I felt like a design analysis was totally necessary. Okay, so let's start with what's really great about this design. From the perspective of drumming up PR and attention, this thing has been a huge success for Tesla. And it proves that people are so desperate for change in the automotive industry that they're open to just about anything different at this point. They'll take anything. And people are talking about design. I mean, people are posting their own modifications to the design on social media. There are probably dozens or actually hundreds of memes at this point about it. And I think the most important thing about this is that the Cybertruck unapologetically states a point of view. Now, just for an example, let's look at all these side views. I had this in another video as well. All of these things look exactly the same, and the Cybertruck is instantly recognizable among a sea of sameness. The last thing is that the interior is actually pretty cool, and I think that if they had used a form language similar to this for the exterior of the vehicle, I bet you that this would have been a much more successful design. I bet you it would have sold better. I bet you that the reviews would have been a little bit less polarizing. I think there would be far fewer people that hate it, and I think there would have been just as many people who really love it. Okay, so let's go to things that maybe are not so good about this truck, or things that could be improved. Now, before I start, I just want to mention that I have a lot of respect for anyone who successfully launches a product and brings it to market. I probably just as much as anybody understand the pain associated with that. But it's important to always push forward in design and think about how we can improve things. That's really what design is all about. So starting with the side view, it's pretty clear that everything is very angular. They even chose to accent this angularity by having this rocker panel and wheel well area be super polygonal rather than round. Now, this directly clashes with the round wheels, so it creates a certain kind of visual dissonance right away. Now, I'm not saying that angular cars can't look beautiful, but the Cybertruck needs a little bit more refinement because round wheels aren't going away anytime soon, and that needs to be sort of considered in the rest of the design. The next thing is the peaked roof. So this also commands a lot of attention, right? It brings your eye right to the top of the car. Now, this creates a resting place for your eye to focus on and stop moving, which is not a good thing for a product that's supposed to be in motion. Now, typically, vehicles communicate a feeling of movement even when they're stationary. Just because that's how things are typically done with cars doesn't mean that's how you need to do it, of course. Maybe you want to communicate a certain level of strength and stability. Now, if that's the case, leading the eye to a central point is a good thing, especially for something that's supposed to be a bulletproof truck, right? The problem is that the pointy roof leads the eye to the top of the vehicle. If you want to communicate that stability, the line should be moving your eye down to communicate the fact that the vehicle is grounded and stable. So moving towards some of the other views, I think that the whole design just sort of communicates this certain uneasiness. More specifically, the areas where these acute angles all converge at one point creates a lot of tension. All of these acute angles are literally like arrows that lead your eyes to these corners and fixed points. The problem is that these corners are not good resting places for the eye because they're often the areas of the car that have the most visual complexity and noise. They actually seem a little bit unresolved in a lot of ways. And it's almost like they're patched together. So even though you have a very simple design, it appears more complicated than it actually is, and it appears more unrefined than it actually is because of all of these complicated corners that your eye is drawn to. The design just seems sort of overly simplistic and unrefined. Now, if you don't believe me, let's take away all the Tesla PR, let's take away the badge, let's take away the fancy renderings, and let's look at this as a student project. What's your honest evaluation? Now, I'm an industrial design professor. If one of my students showed this to me as a final product, I think I would have a hard time passing them for the class. It looks unfinished and the proportions are just sort of unresolved for all the reasons that I stated above. Now, I'm all for the principle of using as little design as possible and keeping things simple, but I am against going more simple than what's necessary, and I think that the Tesla Cybertruck just went a bit too far. Taking it a step further, the design isn't even super original. I mean, there are other cars, some that are 40 to 50 years old, that are very similar to this in terms of the overall design, but they're better executed. Lastly, I personally disagree with the point of view that the Cybertruck presents for our future. It's kind of one of destruction and brutalism and dystopia. The thing looks like a military vehicle or a weapon without the functionality of one. So why would you want to make our world look apocalyptic and deadly before we've even gotten there? That should be a reality and an aesthetic that we try and move away from as much as possible. So that pretty much concludes my review. One last thing that I want to mention is that developing a product is hard, especially one that's as complicated as a truck, and getting it to market is even harder. So I appreciate very much that Tesla took a risk. I just hope that they refine this design a little bit before it goes to market. So that's my review. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe, and feel free to let me know what your thoughts are on this design in the comments. Thank you.